I'd like to welcome Garth Hassel, the author of the book, Keep Your Life. My name's Rob Souza, and I have the privilege of interviewing Garth about the book he wrote 2 years ago. What a great book, and addressing the issue of how do we prevent the complications and the infighting that people experience later in life, whether it's taking care of your parents or having your kids take care of you. What inspired you to write this book in such a way that you felt like you could help multiple generations?
Between my own experiences with my parents passing on, brother who got cancer in the prime of his life, and clients and friends lamenting the issues they were struggling with. And so many of those issues were way more arduous than they needed to be if they had done some planning up front. So I knew that as an advisor helping people with their retirement plan, that the service I was providing was incomplete unless I was tying in their estate planning. So I coined the phrase endgame, where the two estate plan and retirement plan dovetail together.
And you also shared a very interesting story about another couple that were part of the inspiration for this book. Tell us a little bit more about that story.
So Janet and Tom, they've been married 45 years. In the first 20, Janet stayed home, raised their kids, and then when they were empty nesters, she trained up to become her Tom's business partner. So he was a physical therapist, and she was an assistant. She also did the business side. So she was his most trusted and most skilled assistant. But what happened was her parents were starting to have trouble. And, they were a big family, but all the siblings lived farther away. So it was on Janice's shoulders to take care of her parents. She couldn't lean or spread the load to her siblings. They were just conveniently for them, inconveniently for her, too far away. So what happened was when they were running into trouble where her mom and dad really couldn't help themselves anymore, she'd have to intervene. So she could be working with a patient at the physical therapy clinic, and suddenly, where she used to not have her phone near her, she would check her messages during lunch. Now it's buzzing on her hip because she has to, because it's her dad or her mom in trouble. And so she'd have to break away from a patient, and that was creating stress in the business because now some of the patients were annoyed. She'd have to leave, and her husband was, that's his bread and butter. That clinic he built up his entire career, and here she is, the love of his life and his best assistant, suddenly having to bail on patients to go take care of her parents. So that was really awkward and really stressful. And in fact, they were at the point where they wanted to make that business super profitable, have the longest list of patients, to be able to sell it. That was part of their retirement plan. So the idea of having it be making the most money, well, that wasn't happening because she kept having to leave, and she couldn't put the effort into their processes and bookkeeping like she wanted to make that business worth more.
So it was undermining the legacy that I'm sure her own parents would have wanted for her, and having to do that was not only ruining both the quality of life for their parents, but also for them in the prime of their lives and their business and everything else, which then affects the next generation. And you talk about that, loving your loved ones. How did that change when you watched them walk through that process? You told me about them transitioning to possibly having to take care of his parents, and how did that play out?
So she put her foot down when her parents passed on, and now Tom's parents were at the same point that her parents were a few years back. She's like, I don't want any part of this caregiver 2.0 thing. So she knew that her father-in-law was the stubborn one in that particular marriage. So she, one Sunday afternoon after church, they had lunch at their house, and as a family get together, which is totally normal. Then she said, okay, she called her husband's parents, mom and dad too. And she said, so Dad, when you worked in your top secret job, you had these things called safety shares. He said, oh yeah, that was the only thing I could share without having to kill people. And she goes, I loved hearing about those. We're going to have one right here, right now. He's like, what? What do you mean we're going to have a safety share? She looks at her mom and says, Mom, get on the floor. What? Get on the floor, lie down. Now, she did kind of call her mom and prep her a little bit. She primed the pump on this one. It was more of a surprise to her father-in-law. So, her mom gets on the floor and pretends to not be feeling well. And she says, well, Dad, there's nobody around. You better get on the floor and pick her up, take her to the bathroom. She doesn't feel well. He's like, I don't think I like this. And he's grabbing his knees because they don't bend like they used to. He goes, I don't like this little game. This isn't fun. And she said, well, guess what? What's not going to be fun is more likely the tables will be turned and you'll be the one in a couple of years lying on the floor expecting your beloved wife, who weighs half what you do, to help you off the floor. And he just gets all red like this. But he did see the light. And that got the conversations going to where they could pull together their end game. And so Janet and Tom didn't have to relive Caregiver as version 2.0. They did get to spend time with their grandkids and travel the world a little bit. Yeah, when her in-laws needed help, there was a plan in place to get them that help in a way that Janet and Tom could give them their love, but keep their life.
Right. And that makes sense why you have combined both financial advising and legacy planning kind of together into your own practice, and why you emphasize both being so important, yin and yang, that you can't do one without the other. And protecting your family is not just about money. It involves this other step of the process that most advisors don't involve themselves in. And so it's a super helpful tool for us to see what motivated you to write the book, why you specialize doing what you do. You do protect family legacy. So very grateful for you sharing time with us today. That's just kind of a brief introduction of Garth's book. If you would like to get a copy of the book, I'd encourage you to schedule a 15-minute meet and greet with Garth so he can learn a little bit about your story and see if there are any resources he can put into your hand or send you a copy of the book. If you're super eager, you want to go to Amazon, you're welcome to do that too. Just search Garth Hassel, Keep Your Life. We appreciate you for joining us. And each week we're going to be interviewing Garth for each chapter of the book, so you can follow along with us, and there'll be some future bonuses and downloads along the way. But Garth, thank you for joining us today. Look forward to seeing you next week.
My pleasure. Thank you, Rob.